Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here this morning with Danny Pecorelli, Managing Director of Exclusive Collection, and also Louise from Green Key. We were hoping to have Jamila Brown as well, who's Head of House Foundations at Soho House. Sadly, she couldn't be with us this morning, but she's with us in spirit, and I have talked to her about some of the questions that I'm going to be posing this morning, and so hopefully I'll be able to impart a little bit of her knowledge as well. Now, I know it is a packed schedule, so I'm going to jump straight in. This session, it's very interesting actually to me, just how much of the last session was sort of touching on ESG and sustainability. This session is entitled Sustainability, Different Journeys, Same Destination. What I'm interested in here is, I think in terms of destination, we all want a more sustainable hospitality industry. But Danny, if I can start with you, could you tell us a little bit about your sustainability journey at Exclusive Collection?
So our sustainability journey was via B Corp, other brands available, obviously. And I think it was interesting what Kate was saying, the definition of sustainability. I think that's evolved and changed. But B Corp's mantra is very much people, planet, profit. And people are an important part in sustainability, both the people that you work with, but also your community. So Andrew was talking earlier about hyperlocal, supporting your community, charity giving. So I think it's a much wider definition. We chose B Corp because we wanted an industry agnostic accreditation. We wanted a global accreditation. And that was our sort of personal journey. It was driven by personal belief, but actually some of the benefits that have come out of that commercially have been huge.
And that's one of the things that, one of the reasons I wanted you three on the panel was that I think the word authentic was thrown about earlier. And in my opinion, you all authentically and genuinely want to do this. It's not just a tick box exercise. You're using a framework to help, but it's about instilling it into the culture of the business. And Louise, you work for Green Key.
I do.
Which is, I think, a great framework. I should say at this point, personally, I'm a B Corp, so I love B Corp, but also I do work with Green Key as well on the national jury. So these are two frameworks that I'm familiar with. Tell us a little bit about the Green Key journey.
So for Green Key, it's an annual application that the establishments need to go through. We work with 6 categories of tourism establishments, with hotels, holiday parks and campsites, restaurants, conference centres and attractions. And we provide the framework for the sort of sustainability journey of these establishments. We work with a set of imperative criteria that the establishments need to comply with fully before they can be accredited for the first time. And then we have a set of guideline criteria. And each year that the hotels, the establishments renew their application, they need to comply with a little bit more of the guideline criteria. So their sustainability journey is constantly evolving. It's improving each year. It sort of works through different categories, all the operations within the hotel. We look at energy, water, staff involvement, guest involvement. A big part of the Green Key criteria is environmental management at the establishment and overlapping with education. Yeah. So ensuring that your staff are fully aware what you're doing and of the environmental journey of the hotel, and your guests as well, and your stakeholders, and about your local community. As Danny said, it's a big part of sustainability. It's not just about environmental management, it's also about people.
Yeah. And that's something that Jamila was also saying. At Soho House, they have gone on their own journey with the help of sort of consultants, but they've formed what they call their house foundations. And as Jamila said, with their kind of creative demographic and a young workforce, very importantly, what they saw was that there was lots of good work going on around the properties, but they were in kind of semi-silos. And what they did with House Foundations was kind of bring it together with a framework and an area where they could properly resource to bring everybody up to the same sort of level and have it all in one place. And they have a motto which is ensuring the business does as little harm to the environment as possible while striving to make a positive impact wherever they can. People is a big thing, but specifically, and I would say here, if you're looking for a good example of ESG reporting, I would definitely point you in the direction of Exclusive Collection, but also go on the Soho House website. It's a great example of really pinpointing the areas that they're focusing on, which is decarbonising, increasing energy efficiency, reducing waste, protecting their surroundings, and sourcing ethically. So it's all the same kind of stuff. Which brings me kind of to my next question. We've talked about energy efficiency this morning. There's also a lot of talk about net zero, which, according to the recent Sustainable Hospitality Alliance report, would mean that a hotel would need to reduce the carbon emissions per room by 66% by 2030 and 90% by 2050 in order to be in line with net zero. Danny, how easy is it realistically to decarbonise a hotel?
Not easy at all, but it's a journey that we've got to undertake. I think it also, the previous panel slightly alluded to it, it depends on what you've got, but if I can talk briefly about our sort of carbon journey. So we have a reduce metric. Some of that's around CapEx, but that is the kind of lazy corporate option, although I think there's a real supply issue that wasn't spoken about earlier. We're just putting, I'm going to get golf in because that seems to be the theme of the day, but we're just putting solar panels on a golf club down in Castle Combe, and half the parts aren't there. So the delay in supply is enormous. But reduce has to be multi-layered. So you've got CapEx. I sit in the middle on the debate on the previous panel. I think we've also got to look at our offerings, but in micro detail. You know, I've got a pool at Penny Hill Park that we were heating in the summer. So do I change my service offering? And we're going down the Wim Hof route. So, you know, it's dressing it up in marketing speak for cold swimming. So I think you've got to look at your offering. You've got day-to-day nitty-gritty management. We then have a sub-layer which is replace. So we're looking at our dirtiest, there's different types of carbon, right? So we're looking at our dirtiest carbon. Kitchens was mentioned earlier, so we're gradually going through kitchens and replacing gas into induction. Our electricity, by the way, we pay a premium to have guaranteed renewable electricity. So we look at replace, and then where we're lucky and we're slightly different is we have 800 acres of land, so we can sequester carbon. So we partner with the Land app, and we effectively plant, but we have to take biodiversity into account here, because I could plant a monoculture of pine trees. I get really nerdy on this subject, sorry guys. We could plant a monoculture of pine trees, that could sequester more carbon, but I also need to think about biodiversity. But what we're doing, we just planted a vineyard at South Lodge. We'll produce our own sparkling wine in partnership with Ridgeview, who are 12 miles down the road. So not only are the vines sequestering more carbon, that production of that wine is more carbon efficient. And also we're extending an orchard at Lainston House. It's the stories that I can tell by serving our own apple juice for breakfast to guests. So we can tell all of those stories. I'll stop on carbon now, or I'll
But that's what's so apparent when you look at your journey, that it does, just like talking to Sue Williams last year, you know, you view every decision within the business through a sustainable lens, and everything is connected in it. You've got that kind of holistic approach to it. Whereas I'm still seeing lots of properties that are really struggling because it's seen as a sort of project and as something sort of slightly external. But Louise, you're auditing properties all the time. Decarbonising must be a big factor. What are you seeing out there?
I think for us, the most important thing is to start measuring so that you can manage the resources. So part of our criteria this year, we renewed the criteria this year in January. The new criteria came out for hotels to be looking at their carbon footprint. You need to be measuring your carbon footprint so that you can see where, you know, your sort of baseline to begin to manage it moving forward.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
And I think that's a big message that I would also put out there for, you know, if we're talking about things like net zero, and until you know what your baseline is, you cannot work towards any reduction or improvement. Getting that data, as was being talked about earlier,
Kate mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, it's essential as a first step. So anyone who's not yet doing that, get that sort of data in, establish your baseline, because then you've got something to work from. Now, another area here, and I mentioned this to Jamila, and this one was, we touched on it earlier. Sustainability has often been thought of as the green stuff, but it's not just about the environment, it's so importantly about people. Danny, I'll come back to you. How are you investing in the people side of sustainability?
That's a huge question, but I think Louise just mentioned the word education, and I think education is really, really key for all of us. We can make better informed decisions. But I also think it's that internal comms with people. We have our own, we have an internal comms at Beekeeper. We have a channel just on sustainability, because then it ingrains it into the culture. And at every decision level, it's bottom up, top down.
Yeah.
We have to engage the whole organisation. And it's not, you know, these things can conflict. It's not linear, right? If you're making a decision around people, planet, profit, quite often they can be pulling in 3 different directions. So it's that constant comms and dialogue. Why are we making that decision? And best practice, you know, we've got some chefs dehydrating veg peel and putting it into a sauce. It's just, wow, that didn't come from us. That came from the guys internally, and they share that, and then someone else picks it up as best practice.
Once you start thinking about things differently and you involve all your people, then everybody starts looking at things in a different way, don't they?
Yeah.
How do you see that sort of coming out in your audits and things?
I was just going to say, guests love to hear about this stuff as well. They love to see what hotels are doing. They love to know what sort of sustainable actions you're taking. They'd love to know about the dehydrated veg peel that's going into a sauce. I was at an audit earlier this week, actually, at a wonderful hotel that had information just everywhere, all over the hotel, on the back of house side. So for all of their staff in every department, there was information about the environmental initiatives at the hotel, and that the hotel has embarked upon the Green Key application process as part of their environmental journey. Information on the guest side, in the lift, you know, just information really is key, and guests, I think, love to hear about it. It's a great way to engage your staff as well, your team, to keep them interested and motivated and sort of moving as part of your journey overall.
Yeah. And I think, again, it was touched on earlier that in terms of employees, this is also something that particularly our younger employees are looking for in terms of places they want to work. And they're looking for places that do show that they care about people and the planet. Something they're doing at Soho House, which I loved, they have a real big sort of people side of their house foundations. And one of the things they're doing is it's called their mentorship and fellowship program. And what they do, because as you probably know, Soho House is a membership largely organisation, they take people from underprivileged backgrounds and they pair them with members. And those members then help them get into the creative industries. And since they've launched it, 900 people have been through the Soho House Foundation's programme. And that's bringing a whole new lot of people, diversity, new thinking into the creative industries that would not have been able to be done without that connection, which I thought was a really kind of tangible thing that they're doing from a people point of view. You mentioned balancing people, planet and profit, which is the B Corp mantra. It's a mantra I think a lot of us use. Someone was talking about conflict earlier. Danny, can sustainability and profitability can they go hand in hand?
I would argue really strongly, actually, it will enhance your profitability. If you really think about it, and if you take revenue, we've all talked about customer buying decisions are definitely changing. And earlier, Kate was talking about leisure consumers, but corporately, so 40% of my business is MICE. Every single FTSE 250 organisation has a ESG, CSR, Chief Sustainability Officer, whatever they're called. They are making purchasing decisions. They want to know, have you got a B Corp, have you got Green Key accreditation, what have you got? They want tangible evidence. And they also buy into the story, right? So long as it's genuine, so long as it's not greenwashing. So you've got huge revenue opportunities here. You've got people opportunities, as we've been talking about. People want to work for brands with a purpose, people who really care. It's you know, the future employee has choice right at the moment. They can pick where they go, so they are going to pick those businesses that have a genuine purpose, really take this seriously and match their value beliefs. And then below the line, you've got this huge myriad of opportunity. If you truly practice the circular economy, you are reducing your costs. You know, I could give you hundreds of examples, but we don't offer physical newspapers anymore. We digitize it, but we give the customer more choice because they have 280 magazines or newspapers they can download on an app. I'm actually saving money, but I'm saving carbon. Yeah. If I'm looking at my food waste, I'm not paying the bin men to take away food waste, right? So there's so many opportunities. There are areas where I pay a premium for green electricity, but that's a conscious choice. But I would argue that actually below the line, we save more and it's controlled our costs better. We're doing better at attracting staff so we can service business, which a lot of people are finding it very hard, us included, but we're doing better than most. And we've got more revenue coming in because people are buying into what we do. And the point we were sort of making earlier, we can tell these great stories that excites the customer,
so there's more engagement thing.
Yeah, so that whole package just drives profitability.
Yeah, so the message again is it's not a conflict.
No.
This is the way forward. On that point about
part of your business sort of strategy.
And on that part, when you were saying about corporates, this has been a big change in the last 12, 18 months. A stat here from the Global Business Travel Association, they reckon that 53% of US companies now have a corporate sustainability program that affects their decision to contract a travel supplier. So if you can't jump through your ESG hoops, you're not even getting a chance to tender for some corporate business. Louise, you're out talking to lots of different types of hotels. Do you see that big change in terms of what's driving the agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The corporate market It's been a big factor in hotels looking at their ESG policies, looking at their strategies, looking at their accreditation journeys to have that verification that they are doing what they're saying they're doing, and that they're not just greenwashing, or that they're not just ticking a few boxes on Booking.com that says that they're not using disposable straws anymore. You know, the corporates are demanding more than that to be able to send their business to that hotel, and it's had a massive impact on hotels.
And I think this again was touched on, but it always fascinates me, Danny. Every hotel's different and every journey is going to be different. And if you've got a new build, some of these things are a lot easier. You've had to kind of retrospectively refit a lot of old properties. It was touched on earlier. What's been some of your biggest challenges there?
I think Andrew hit on them. If you've got an old building, you've got single glazing, you've got poor glass quality, our utility consumption is higher than per key, per room occupied, whatever metric you want to take, than a new build. So we're definitely around the energy, but I always turn it, we've actually got more opportunities because it's back to, we've got land, so we can create those stories and sequester. So I think you've always got to look at everything in and around. I think no matter how much we like to think everybody's engaged, not everybody is engaged. You know, some people just want to turn up to work and it's the last thing. There's a lot going on in the world, right?
Yeah.
You know, do people, not everybody cares as much as I do, we do. So that's a challenge. It's probably more expensive to retrofit solutions for me. Once again, planning is actually a massive issue in the UK. I was just talking to a group of hoteliers recently. One that runs a huge spa operation. Planners have turned down a biomass. Because the chimney heights, you know, we had a real problem at South Lodge trying to get biomass in because the chimney height's too high, right? Well, you know, no one could see it. It's the credentials from a sustainability point of view were huge. Planners just turned around and said, you've got to change it.
Right. So it's just doing what you can do. But for you, going back, your message is it's worth it. It's all worth it.
It is worth it. And, you know, if I take the biomass, they say no. It was the only objection in the whole project, but we just kept going,
One of the things that Jamila actually was saying to me, that she was saying, yes, sustainability, it can have upfront costs, but it is all about efficiency and reducing wastage. That's part of sustainability. And so in the long term, the ROI on a lot of these investments should be there. But it's obviously a challenge for many at the moment. Do I have any questions from the audience? Oh, I think there's one over there if we have a... furthest part of the room.
Hi, thanks. So you mentioned on sustainability about verification, right? And you said about not ticking some boxes. And so is there any specific verification process or something like an industry standard that we could potentially promote in the hotel industry space?
Well, I think one of the things, so what we've got here, if I touch on that first, is I think hotels have, we were talking about ESG frameworks sort of earlier, and there are different ones. And I think it's about working out what's right for your particular property. But Green Key is a very accessible hotel or hospitality specific program, and it's one that I know HOSPA sort of supports. And then you've got sort of broader non-hospitality frameworks like B Corp, which Danny, you've gone for. Why did you go for a non?
It's back to I wanted it industry agnostic and I wanted a global brand. I think the three brands that are gaining traction is Green Key, B Corp and EarthCheck seem to be the three. When we looked at our accreditation options, I think there was 273 accreditations, some purely old-fashioned green, sort of just on sustainability. It's really difficult. I don't think it's like anything in life. I don't think you'll get a unified standard, but I think the market will sort itself out.
I think one thing I would certainly say to people is consider your corporate market, ask your corporates what programs they recognise, and they will come back and tell you things like Green Key and more so recognising B Corp. Also, if you look at the Google now, Eco Search, there are certain programs in there that will help you be found on Google, and those programs as well should also be something that I guess people are looking at.
There's just 29, I think, recognised by Google. Out of the hundreds of labels that are out there, there's only 29 that are recognised by Google Travel.
Now I'm going to wrap up on time because, sorry, Harry.
I'd just like to ask a question. Short question, yes, Peter. Just like a question. Are there any incentives from government for you to, reduce your carbon? I mean, has anything been discussed or come across from government, as it's in government's interest to have zero carbon? They're putting, they're making statements about it.
Well, we are still committed to net zero by 2050. Danny, you're probably...
Incentives.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the government talk a great game, right? But there's no incentive. I think it's going to go the other way. They are going to start introducing penalties for those companies that aren't. That will be the lens that they look at it through. I think the government have got bigger fish to fry in their mind, and the challenge always is that, and to a degree we'll see it with corporates, during a recession it kind of drops in priority. I was just reading some stuff on COP recently, and actually coal production's gone up because of Ukraine. So sustainability tends to gain traction on an upswing in the cycle, both with government and corporates, and to a degree the leisure consumer, and it tends to come slightly off the focus in a downturn, and hey, we're going to be in a downturn for 2 years. So to me, the answer to the question is government, no, it's going to end up being penalties. Do they really give a monkeys? Is it a priority at the moment? No, which is why there's a real business imperative that we take it seriously, because the way we can influence suppliers is absolutely huge. If I have 20 million of F&B spend, and Andrew has 20 million of F&B spend. His is probably far greater than mine, but we can influence those suppliers. We can make decisions that take it out of government hands.
I think that's the big message: is business driving it, and the UK is committed to net zero by 2050. I agree with you. There's a lot of talk there. I guess as we get closer to some of those landmark dates, just as you say, we can expect to see more penalties for bad behaviour and hopefully more incentives for good behaviour. Our time is up. I just wanted to wrap up with something from Jamila, actually. I asked her if she had one piece of advice to give to the audience to help them on their journey, what would it be? She was really emphatic about this. She said, collaborate. Work with your teams, your suppliers, your peers, your local communities. Talk about your challenges, help everyone identify solutions, connect ideas and people together, build things to help our industry change the game. There's so much innovation out there, it's time to harness it. This is no time to be competitive. On that note,
Nice words.
I'd like to thank Danny, Louise and Jamila. We love you. Thank you very much, everybody.